Hello and welcome to another edition of Code Remix Weekly. We're your usual hosts, Sam and Tim. I'm Sam. He's Tim. How you doing, Tim?
Hi. Doing well. How are you?
Yeah, I'm also doing well. It's a little bit hot here in Seattle by our standards. It's like 85 degrees Fahrenheit, which is a little toasty. When I first moved here, most places didn't have air conditioning, but I was sure to get that installed on my house a couple of years ago, and it was worth it. What's the weather like there? Are you hot? You cold? I hear Europe's pretty hot.
Yeah, I have like 85 plus in the living room at the moment, which is much for me doing trying to work. So
how are you? Does your apartment or condo have air conditioning of any kind?
No, none at all, and I have the sun all afternoon, so it's.
Yeah, I was noticing the picturesque sunbeams entering right through the window next to you. How do you stay cool? Do you use like evaporative cooling, or you like throwing a wet towel over your head every time you're off camera?
Just off screen, there's like a fan directed right at me, which kind of helps. And then the one challenge I had today was to remember to put on a shirt every time I had a meeting. That kind of pretty cool.
Yeah, you just get used to sitting casually at your desk, and then right in a business environment. Well, right on, Tim. Well, good luck staying cool. Hopefully, the worst of the heat wave stays constrained down in France and doesn't, blow up to Belgium and the Netherlands. I don't know of any major geographical barriers that would guarantee that.
Well, the problem is you need any kind of like hills or mountains to stop kind of like a hot air bubble, and we have none. So.
Netherlands kind of doesn't do the mountains thing, yeah.
We're looking at like 100 plus over the near Friday. So,
dear God, do you have somewhere to retreat to that does have more active climate control?
Well, the nearest office, as you know, is either London or Toronto at the moment. So.
All right. Well, if we don't hear from you, we'll have to send someone to check on you and make sure that you're not dying of heat stroke in your apartment.
There is, of course, the option to walk to the north side of the apartment, which is better, but it's not. Yeah, it's not
not a whole lot better. All right. Well, thoughts and prayers for you, Tim. What do we have in terms of OpenRewrite news for the week?
I thought for today I would mostly feature some community contributions that we've been seeing coming by, but we do, of course, always have the Code Remix Summer going on for the next month and a half still. So if you're interested in any of these sessions that have popped up on our Code Remix Summit early May, then those are now drip feeding through our YouTube channel. So if you're interested in viewing those, register at the link that we're going to send in the chat right now and pull up as well. And then from there, hope to see you there. And you'll see one familiar face hosting a session Friday, but there is a live Q&A. So if you have any questions throughout, the nice thing now is that the folks won't be presenting, but they'll be right there to answer any questions that you have in the moment. So that's pretty neat. And then last week, I gave you a sneak preview of our new website, and now I can tell you that it is live. So if you're interested in that, then go to modern.ai and you should be able to see all of this. It is quite neat. I, having myself worked in bioinformatics for about a decade, didn't think I'd once again work for a company where we have genes and proteins on the front page, but here we are. So, Sam, we lost your audio, or did I lose my audio?
I'm back. Sorry. Having worked when we first founded Moderna, it was during the pandemic, and everyone thought it was Moderna. Right, the vaccine company, another medical technologies company, and well, I guess we're leaning into that confusion now.
It's certainly not helping, but it does look nice. So
it looks great.
Yeah. And then for the next couple tabs, I want to show you some ongoing community work, which was quite neat. And it started last week when we saw this pull request come in from someone who, if you know him well, he is one of the two folks behind the TestNG project itself. And he came up with some recipes added to our OpenRewrite rewrite testing module to help folks move off of the assertions within TestNG, which I found was quite interesting. And then we dug into it a bit. He wrote the recipes himself, aided, of course, as everyone does these days, with some agentic tools. And the story behind this is that the TestNG project itself is trying to wean off of the assertion library that they have. So they have an assertion class, and they're finding that assert_j is a neat drop-in replacement. And through some of the recipes that we already have, they're now making it easier for folks to migrate off of that. And what we then, of course, did is we doubled down on that. So over the weekend, I wrote some more recipes to help ease you in that transition off of TestNG and onto assert_j. And all of that is available for you. So if you want to go to the latest version of rewrite testing frameworks, then you should be able to do both that migration from TestNG to assert_j with more ease, as well as some unique improvements for assert_j to help you all along that transition and to better improve the quality of your tests. And then we also saw this folded into the assert_j project itself. And then on that topic, the folks behind assert_j, they are also working towards some improvements there, again, using recipes. But this is something that, Sam, you and I have worked both on this morning, or my morning, or late evening, where they are working to convert all of their Java work onto the Markdown slab that you get in Java 25. And I think we both learned a bit this morning. I didn't know that you could target Java 21, but have your Java doc written in Markdown in that //
Yeah, it makes sense when you think about it, that something like that would depend on the version of the JDK you're using, not the version of the bytecode that you're compiling to. But there had just never been a scenario before now where that distinction mattered that I had noticed. So that was a new one.
But it is neat because that means you can run this recipe, pull it forward even before you're running yourself on Java 25, and still get your Java docs compiled in this way. So then, of course, this also coincided with some additional changes to rewrite and migrate Java, as well as a new release coming up to fold in some of these improvements. And then once those are all out, then the assert_j team can migrate their Java docs, and maybe we'll see broader adoption from there on out. So pretty neat. And then as a final one, we have some friends of ours who are also working with recipes, and IntelliJ themselves, they came out with a new video just today with the very clear title, Nulls Are Dead. And that is looking at using, amongst other technologies, JSpecify, but also OpenRewrite to help drive adoption of JSpecify in applications to get rid of the null pointer exceptions that we saw in the past. For the folks who are working with Java, it's an immediate fix. If you were working with Kotlin or partly working with Kotlin, you'll see some neat interchange issues and improvements you can get if you apply JSpecify. So I recommend this video for others as well. If you want to go to the IntelliJ IDE channel, then this is the latest version that they have on there. And that is all of the community updates that I want to show you all today. Am I still sharing? Yes. There we go. And that then brings us to our guests for this special episode. We're going to bring on two folks. One is Devin Thomson, the Director of Engineering at Tinder for the backend platform team. And the other is Ryan Trontz, the technical lead for the backend platform team at Tinder.
So, whoops. Welcome, Ryan and Tim. How you guys doing? Good to have you.
Hey, guys. Good to see you again.
Hey, thanks for having us on the stream.
Yeah. Good to see you again after Code Remix Summit. Ryan, how did your talk go there? Did you get a positive reception? Was it fun? Everything you hoped it would be?
Everything I would hoped it would be, and more, of course, because we got the
Wonderful.
but really, no, we had a great time. We got a lot of positive feedback, but it was great to get out there and kind of talk about something that we've spent basically the majority of my first 5 years at Tinder working on. We've done reviews where we reflected on over a third of our bandwidth was consumed by the exact work we gave a talk on. So that was cool.
Yeah, that's great. And so it gets to be kind of maybe a little capstone for you, or a milestone at least to track progress along the way. So for anyone who didn't get to attend that talk where you discussed building the upgrade muscle at with OpenRewrite at Tinder, you want to give like a brief high level summary of the topic?
Sure. Yeah. So when we first started at Tinder, we had a pretty limited org-wide upgrade process. We were doing it for Node.js a couple times. We had done one Java upgrade. I think Devin did it before I started to get everyone to Java 8. A real solo heroes effort.
Yeah.
And you know, we had some growing pain points, and we proposed our first Java upgrade. And we had some sage mentors of the company who gave us a couple of good catchphrases that really built the foundation of this. Was one, it's a muscle. Getting good at upgrades is something you do repeatedly, and you have to build the muscle by getting your reps in. And the other one was that it takes a village. Now it just takes a village of robots, but ultimately it still takes a village. And so building the muscle of teamwork and community around upgrades, and also remarketing them as platform initiatives, was really helpful for us. And that is kind of what we gave our talk on. And interleaved in that, we had some major leaps forward in our capabilities doing this, largely through Devin's contributions back to OpenRewrite and helping us get off JMockit and moving to Mockito. And then, of course, continuing that process as we have integrated AI into the upgrade process, removed a lot of the manual stakeholder involvement, and kind of joined deterministic automation and scripting with AI to remove a lot of our stakeholders' effort in the process and allow us to do many, many more upgrades on a regular basis. Our Q3 roadmap alone has a bucket of maybe 6 of them that we're just going to do on full auto mode of varying sizes and across multiple language platforms.
Yeah, I think our presentation can also serve somewhat like a blueprint for especially smaller platform orgs. Tinder has always run as a very lean company. I think right now we have around 300 engineers total with tens of millions of daily active users. It's a very high user to engineer ratio. So we have to make do with what we have. And for a lot of these smaller technical orgs, they sometimes feel a little bit of paralysis, right? Around how do I handle this upgrade? Like, it's so risky. There's so much to do. And like, I just don't have the time. We set up the blueprint for how we started before AI, a lot of spreadsheets, a lot of stakeholder management, right? And getting it done that way with that village approach, and then transitioning to using OpenRewrite to automate a lot of that. And then finally, how you leverage both AI and OpenRewrite in a cost-effective manner is a lot of what we landed on in the presentation. And reassuringly, that was a theme from many presentations at Code Remix, including the final roundtable discussion. That was like the hottest topic. So this is clearly something that a lot of companies are thinking about as we lean more and more into AI to getting the job done. How do we do that in a way that doesn't break the bank? You see even some companies, I saw a post recently, Disney's pulling back on AI usage, like they're spending too much on Cloud. Cloud Enterprise subscriptions are incredibly expensive. We use Cloud Enterprise, but I think like eventually they're gonna have to dial it back, So how, like, you wanna use the AI to build those tools that can be handling the repeated work, right? And for orchestrating the work, right? That was kind of the theme of where we landed.
Yeah, I think about that a lot, and that's all really good stuff. I think about that a lot with if you have 20 repositories and you tell an AI agent, upgrade me to Java 25 on one of them, and then you go to the next one, you're basically starting from scratch again, right? But if you have it write you a recipe, then you have something that isn't going to cost you more tokens to go deploy that out to any number of subsequent repositories. Ryan, you had said something I thought was interesting, or was curious to hear more about rebranding the upgrade as a platform initiative. I think was the term you used. The finding the right words and the right politics to get things done is something very interesting to me. I think as programmers, we work with our magical words and our magical language, and you put the words in the right order, the computer does cool things. And every now and then you find something like that for people too, where you're describing something that you want or trying to persuade people of something, and it just isn't working until you like match the wavelength they're on, and then they get what you're talking about. And like, oh yes, I do want that. So I was kind of hearing something like that in what you were saying. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, you heard that correctly. So first off, we're going to reference our slides and our talk quite a bit, I'm sure, throughout the next hour. For those
feel free to share your screen if you want to put them on.
Yeah, well, the talk will be shown on Friday.
There's that. I look
Some more
forward to it.
modern content, so people can check that out, and we won't bore them with the actual slides right now. But
Very good.
one part of that talk mentioned that we became a victim of our own success. The Java upgrade went really well. We eventually took over the Node upgrades, and that became part of our team. And then we found ourselves kind of helping orchestrate or orchestrating Java, Spring Boot, Flink, Node, TypeScript, org-wide npm package updates. The whole thing goes on, right? We're building the muscle, but at the time when we're in this manual mode where we need a lot of stakeholder coordination, reaching out to individual team EMs and ICs to be kind of the points of contact for a given team or repo, the spreadsheet tracking, that's a lot of work by a lot of people. A lot of mythical man or person months are getting burnt up during that time. And we aren't the only team doing upgrades. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of cloud infrastructure, but boy, do they have a lot of migrations to run, right? Every time, a major cloud provider wants to deprecate a version of whatever their Redis fork is or Elasticsearch or whatever, we got to get moving. And so there's a lot of that going on at all times in an enterprise software org. And we got some feedback during kind of an internal leadership summit. People were just straight up burnt out on migrations.
Yeah.
And that was definitely a signal to us to increase the automation. But at the same time, not all migrations are created equal.
Right.
And what is a migration? Because the word migration really carried with it this weight that it delivered no value, that life would go on just fine without it. And there's really not any good part about this. It's just this medicine that you have to take as an engineering org. It's not, there's nothing good about it.
Yeah, you leave where you're at now and you wander in the desert for 40 years, and your reward is that you find another place that was like the place you started from.
That is,
and then you're going to have to do it all over again in
you're gonna do
6
it again,
months.
Exactly. Because when we pitched the Java upgrade, we were going from 8 to 11 in 2022. That was not the latest LTS version of Java. No. And so part of my original pitch to Devin was hey, we're going to do this annually until we catch up to LTS. And then I promise we can back off to every other year. This is the year we catch up to LTS. It's 2026 now. But we needed to do some sales and marketing to make sure this wasn't going to die on the vine, for sure. So that happened. I would say 2024, I think, because I think, Devin, that's when you were out on leave. That's when we did the rebrand. We're hey, these are platform initiatives. And then we started a
people love that. People love that naming, right? It's something new, right? Not just a migration with the toxicity that's associated with that word.
Yeah. And now through kind of automation, you've maybe arrived at a place where platform initiatives will never acquire the kind of baggage that migration acquired, because you've built the muscle now. It's easier. You have OpenRewrite and AI. Are people getting tired of platform initiatives the way they got tired of migrations, or everyone's we love platform initiatives. They're great.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. The answer is no. People aren't tired of it because we've largely taken the work out of their hands now with all the automation that we built, partially thanks to OpenRewrite. So now a lot of this is just a matter of we create all the PRs, we do all the testing now up front. That was an intermediate layer where we would create the PRs, but then we'd still put the testing on them, and that really still bugged people because they have to stop what they're working on and go test it. So now we spent a lot of time just building up automation to test services in a more robust way. So now it's really just a matter of signing off on the PR, right? And then depending on the team, if they have continuous deployment enabled, that just goes straight to prod, and it's not a ticking time bomb waiting to be deployed later. Some teams prefer a little more manual, babysitting of that rollout to prod, but we've largely taken the work out of their hands now. With a lot of that is thanks to AI helping us build the automation.
And maybe good to point out as well that where if you say it's a platform initiative, the platform team on your end is not 30 folks, it's 3. Am I right?
Yeah, often I'll put one engineer on a project depending on the complexity involved. Some, as Ryan mentioned before, not all upgrades or migrations are created equal. So if you've got a framework upgrade with many breaking changes, I'm probably not going to put one engineer on that. But at Tinder, we tend to be very scrappy and resourceful, and we can get things done with relatively small teams. Of course, you have to coordinate a little bit. You can't just deploy all of Tinder's backend yourself, right? But yeah, a lot of companies will have entire teams devoted to this sort of thing, and we just do it with a team of 3.
Yep.
I was curious about you mentioned that one way you've made this more palatable to people is that you've taken on some of the burden of testing the upgrade yourself. How do you know what to test? Is that fairly standardized across Tinder? Like what testing looks like? Is it just like, hey, it's going to be, if you just run the unit tests and they're all green, like we're good here? I would imagine that some teams might surprise you of like, no, we've got this whole like process for verification that isn't obvious to someone just like cloning the report.
I think we lost Sam.
Yeah,
I think we have enough to answer the question, though.
I think we have enough. I can. Oh, say Sam, we lost you mid question, but I think we got enough.
Yeah, I was wondering about the practicalities of taking the testing burden onto yourself for code base that you don't own directly.
So just to directly respond to one thing you said around unit testing, no, like unit testing doesn't cover it, right? Like unit testing will make sure that your methods don't like throw a null pointer exception or something like that. But at runtime, there's so many more things to worry about, right? So yes, we now have, over 80% code coverage of unit tests in all of our services. That's a requirement that we put out in 2024. But you really need to exercise the code on a running service to know if it's safe, right? So what we built is this large suite of regression tests with the help of AI, and rolled that across our whole backend so that when the deploy happens, then we run tests against that before we promote to prod, right? Not every test is created equal, of course. Some of these are more cursory. Does the thing start up? Does it return 200? If you want to get into the business cases, we as a platform team don't have that expertise, and it would be quite a burden to ask us to handle every single logical fork, right? So there's some that still goes to the team to make sure that they cover those critical business forks. But we have high confidence now that when we make a language upgrade or a framework upgrade, it's running, it's serving requests, it's probably okay. So we also take a deliberate approach on how we roll out. We'll start with the low risk services first, right? And get those deployed and make sure that in prod, everything's working well. And then we'll graduate to higher risk, higher scale until we get to like the most critical services that like the ones that serve recs or account creation and things like that. So, go ahead. No, I spoke enough. Go ahead, Ryan.
All right. So the testing with upgrades is something that has evolved along with the upgrade muscle. You could say maybe it's gone from a muscle to a muscle group now. Is that we had this operational excellence push a few years ago where we did start enforcing a test coverage minimum. And this is, again, across languages. And so each kind of development community at Tinder is a little bit separate. Like some of our teams almost exclusively develop in Node.js and others almost exclusively develop in JVM languages. And the infrastructure and maintenance of those ecosystems kind of happened independently over time. And so to Devin's point with like the end-to-end test that we have kind of at the system or microservice level, that's been evolving rapidly over the last few years. And so we went from, okay, some teams have really leaned into this immediately. So when we upgrade, and so our Java ecosystem is split into kind of domain or team specific repositories. So we have repos anywhere from some as few as 5 to 8 projects, and some of them with as many as 150 to 200 projects. But they're all multi-project Gradle repos, at least in the Java ecosystem. And so some of these, we might look at a repo and say, you have 5 projects, only one of which is a microservice, and it already has a nice end-to-end regression suite. That one, we're like, great, ship it, bump the Java toolchain, let's go. Now, of course, if this is, the Spring Boot 3 upgrade, where we're firing up OpenRewrite, getting, the Jakarta EE migration going, there's a lot more to look into here, right? We're doing a lot of stuff for the first time. But when, with those, we embrace kind of what test coverage is available for that team or domain, and we leverage that accordingly. We also spend a fair bit of time in the exploratory phase planning these upgrades and building our tooling to also figure out what can break. This was something that we came up with the very first Java upgrade because we had such a reliance on manual verification, was what we called a shared breakage tracker. Not a lot of magic here, just a Google Doc Because again, at the time, we had roughly 100 stakeholders who were participating in the first Java upgrade as code changers. For the first Java upgrade, we just gave a checklist of what to do to people. We didn't even make the PRs. And so, I mean, this is before we'd even discovered the GitHub CLI as an automation tool. So it was really like, it's very manual. And so for testing purposes, what we said, hey, anyone who comes up with a breakage, like you run your Gradle build and it fails, I don't care what it is, or it's like runtime and you're using our development environment, just copy and paste the failure into this Google Doc, describe what you were doing when you got it, and then bring it to the shared Java upgrade channel we have. And then let's start crowdsourcing solutions. And as soon as we have one, we'll put it back on that doc. And now we have solved this failure for everyone. We don't really need the shared breakage tracker in the same way now with auto mode, as we might call it, for upgrades. But the amount of effort that goes into that discovery kind of remains the same for us. And so if we get to a team's repo, and now because, again, we've been doing this for a few years, we know which teams offhand are the ones that we're going to like really microscope in on a little bit. And not to say that like, you know, they're bad teams or anything like that, but just we know that these are high risk situations or things that are a little off the paved path and they need an extra eye. Those are the ones where we might use that repo as a POC when we're building the tooling for the upgrade itself. And we'll start to see those failures early. And we might reach out to that team ahead of time before we've even like said, hey, you know, March 15th, we're kicking off the Java upgrade this year. Like, let's say it's, we'll call it the desk management team since I'm looking at a desk. And I'm like, hey, desk management team, I see that we already have some like compilation failures. I have never even seen some of these libraries that are failing right now. Can you give me a little context on this? And so, you know, that is kind of how we can preempt some of the manual verification work and we want to shift all that left as much as possible. But as far as the testing is concerned, we can test by relying on the existing testing that our teams have, but also keeping an awareness of what's there and what's not, and not just being like, hey, some people have regression tests, so let's treat everyone like they do. Like we want to case by case it and build kind of our own permanent context around what our ecosystem looks like. And again, back to our talk, we want to bundle cleanup tasks or ecosystem improvement tasks into our upgrades. And last year, the Java upgrade task was adding regression tests where possible to these services. So that once we know in the next upgrade, we land on a place that's really well covered and we can say, hey, we see you have a lot of regression tests here. Here's your Java upgrade PR. Is this a merge and go situation or is there something like we should all know? And we're now getting, we can see there's like been a clear up and to the right movement of people saying like, yeah, just if the regression test pass, man, go for it.
Right.
And that's been a huge help to us as a platform team, but also to the org at large, because if we know these PRs where our stakeholders really have little insight by design into what the underlying changes might be, and they're confident in these, that's also telling us they're getting a lot more confident about their own code changes, and they're able to ship higher quality code to production faster on the first try.
Yeah, eventually, though, we do want to get to a place where even the resolution of the, like, let's say a regression test fails, like a live service test fails, having the agents able to proactively debug what that issue actually is and then correct it in the upgrade software itself is what we want to get to eventually. So right now we're building a lot of, you know, observability and telemetry into a lot of like our tooling that we never had before, with the sole purpose of feeding into whatever agent software we're using so it can self-correct. Eventually, the goal would be that we have to spend very little time on upgrades anymore, right? It's like a background task. And at some of the talks I've visited recently, a lot of the big tech companies, they have entire migration agent systems where it is fully automated, right? We're a smaller team, we're working our way there, but that's where we want to get to. We used to spend around 30% of our team bandwidth on this stuff. Hope to get that down to around 5%.
And that, again, allows you to have that lean organization where you can achieve a lot more with a lot fewer than you otherwise would need. Yeah?
Exactly.
Yep.
I was curious, Devin, a little bit earlier, and now again with the subject of AI agents, you had talked about controlling costs, which I think is going to be on everyone. Freezing again.
You are, but but I think I know where you were going. If you want to just finish.
I'm curious about how we as an industry, and you guys in particular, are going to make using these AI.
I'm wondering how much time I should give him before I just respond.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, sorry, Sam. So yeah, I mean, obviously, the word of 2026 is, you know, agents, right? AI, and that's what we're all using. A lot of us as our only way of writing code now, right? For upgrades, though, you know, this can start to get very, very expensive, especially if you have a large code base, right? Using you know, Codex or Claude to do every upgrade in every repo, right? Yeah. Maybe in the early stages, it wasn't so expensive. Tokens weren't so expensive, but that's changing. You know, these companies are going public. They have to meet their shareholder value, and they're going to start charging more and more. So it's on us to get ahead of that, right? So we want to leverage AI as much as we can to build the tools that do the repeated work, so that you only have to build the tool with the AI, and then you're just running the tool. Maybe you leverage AI to orchestrate the running of the tool, but the actual execution is not being done by AI, right? So OpenRewrite meets that need really well when it comes to migrations. It's community, it has an active community. A lot of the recipes are already there for the type of work that you would be doing. It's just a matter of fitting it to your company's technical ecosystem, and you can leverage AI or maybe, you know, some pipeline to run the upgrade rather than using AI to do it every time. When it comes to building software, though, you know, if it's like a greenfield service or application, yeah, I probably wouldn't necessarily build a tool for that unless it was really like the same pattern happening over and over, right? So AI still has its place for writing lots of code. Just I wouldn't use it for like maintenance work long term, right? Like it's more of that orchestration layer. Poor Sam.
Yeah, that's that's tough.
You know, this is where he wants to respond. It's just his eyes are closed and his voice is gone.
It's unfortunate. Ryan, you want to add while Sam is returning?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, what Devin is saying about building the tools with AI, I mean, this is something that we talk about a lot at work, is that like, especially there's like this little spectrum of, oh, can you do it easily with your own fingers? Then just do it, right? Can you get checkout yourself instead of asking Claude to do it? Yes. Okay, great. The next thing is like, all right, I know what I need to build. I know what small functionality I need, but maybe I don't remember the 16 flags of grep and sed in order to get this like quick thing done. That's where you have AI build the tool, right? That's one shot, one quick description, you got it. Great. Then you get into the longer example of this where you're like, maybe I don't even know which Unix tools need to go in my giant one-liner to do this, so I can have AI help me plan or design this tool a little bit. Then we build it. And then finally, you will eventually get to something where you're like, the output of this is really not going to be deterministic in the near future, or at least not in one that my brain can imagine. So now I will use AI with these tools that I've built to minimize the amount of non-determinism in this. I mean, and this mindset is really applicable everywhere from like mass code migrations. And obviously this is where OpenRewrite can be so powerful, but even all the way down to our Jira interactions at work. I mean, we have a Jira skill, and I spent an inordinate amount of time having it churn away with the Atlassian CLI to make all of my most common flows basically just CLI one-liners, and then wrap it with a minimal amount of markdown. But that took quite some time to do that. But again, now I use that multiple times a day, and I don't open the Jira website unless Devin needs an update on something. And then that's it. And so yeah, so those upfront investments with AI to build determinism into our workflows, those are really like great ways to see return on investment with AI like very quickly. Because when you build something that you use repeatedly, so you say, I don't have to use these tokens anymore, that's a huge help. The other part of this is obviously, you know, we have spent a lot of time just like churning away with Opus or Codex 5.5 or, you know, all of the most expensive models. And now we are looking at ways like, hey, at which point can we creatively delegate to a lesser model? I've even tried like tinkering with some of my existing skills to be like, all right, at this point in our little tree of progression, can we downgrade to haiku? Or if you're using Cursor, their composer model is obviously like pretty cost efficient, and that one gets a lot of attention as well. Looking for opportunities to just do this. And honestly, I've even had success asking the agents to look for opportunities to use a lesser model in the existing skill, and then adding that guidance in there. And I've even with very little effort, I've seen pretty significant improvement in that. And those obviously come with improvements in latency too, because we know that the most expensive frontier models are also the longest to respond to. And so it's a great way to basically save yourself some time and money.
Sam, we lost you after the last response. I was curious if you had any thoughts though on that.
Yeah. I heard most of what you guys were saying. I am
okay.
I am I feel like I've been spoiled by using Claude and Opus for everything, and am looking at Anthropic and OpenAI trying to get their own $1 trillion valuations, and just thinking like they would have to turn the screws on pricing so much in order to be profitable with how expensive it is to run these frontier models. I just feel like it doesn't even, I can't like solve that formula in my mind for how these companies and these models continue to exist in this way. So yeah, this it's interesting, Ryan, hearing about your usage of smaller, cheaper models. You're running any models locally these days?
I have tinkered with this, but it's not something that we've like deeply explored at the company level.
No.
Anytime I'm on a flight, I try to fire up Docker Model Runner just to see like what is like the most well-known model I can run on my work provided MacBook, just to see like how it goes. It's interesting. I mean, I think the thing that we've really gotten spoiled on, at least over the past, time is such a flat circle when it comes to model evolution. I have no idea how long it's been, but since the 1 million token context window became the default for Sonnet and Opus, that ruins you for when you want to run local models on your machine, because you cannot support those models with those context windows.
Yeah.
And so even if you're being responsible about your context and taking all the accepted guidance of like keeping your threads tight and basically like Unix threads, do one thing, do it well, and get out of the thread. Even with that, I do a lot of planning and exploratory work for platform work that we wouldn't have time to do otherwise, but now could be enabled by AI. And that like exploratory work, that one dies on the vine almost immediately with a local model and a smaller window. But that doesn't mean it's not possible. It just means that I need to change my approach in those situations. So that's one area where I definitely want to continue like exploring my own usage of the models. Is like, how can I do the deeper exploratory work that might cross repos, or like really expand a lot of tentacles out to get a feel for something. I don't know if you guys know of any tools that can build permanent repo context in a structured manner, but doing that for this kind of work, that gets expensive in a hurry. And so figuring out how to separate threads effectively, but also like organically save that memory is important. I mean, obviously like cross-session memory is probably the biggest topic right now in AI development, especially as we move from harness engineering to loop engineering.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think we've obviously got the pre-think recipes, which are there to use deterministic OpenRewrite recipes to add model relevant context into repos, and our initial things we've put in there of like coding patterns and dependencies and error handling patterns is all like good and relevant stuff. But I wonder, I'm sure it's not the final set of things that are going to be in pre-think. We do already have a mechanism for people to, add whatever like pre-think context they want if they have like a custom recipe that finds something relevant. But I think we will have an interesting kind of exploratory time coming up where we figure out, well, what is the context that you could get from a recipe that would enable using smaller, cheaper, smaller context window agents to punch above their weight class a little bit, or to just run the frontier models more cheaply and just not have them have to consume so many tokens, refiguring out the repository every time. So it's very interesting in that respect. I'm also curious, just in a purely AI sense, or using AI for new development, not like maintenance tasks. I personally feel like there's so much more code moving that, like, being produced by me, being produced by my colleagues, that all code being produced maybe gets like a little lower level of scrutiny, just because I don't, I've less bandwidth for doing that, relative to the amount of code being produced. Even sometimes I'll have my agent make a change and then it's done, and I'm like, okay, here's the not fun part where I got to go look at what it did and figure out if it's any good and actually understand what it produced, and make some decision about it. So I'm curious what your experience with that has been. Even in your own code, are you getting the applying the same level of rigor to your own changes before, or in this new era of AI development, as you would before when you were hand authoring every character?
Yeah, it's a great question. This was probably, in our recent developer survey, the #1 complaint from particularly the more senior engineers, that the volume of code and the nature of the code being shipped now, largely not being constrained to team boundaries anymore. People feel empowered to contribute to code bases that maybe they never did before. I know I'm personally guilty of that, because we want to move more quickly, right? But the domain experts are kind of left on the hook to make sure, hey, like, am I going to let this go? It's a 1,000-line PR, Yeah. So we, use more AI to try to say, hey, is this safe or not, right? But even that, like, you start to have such a reliance on AI, you don't even really know what's changing anymore. So I've seen at some recent conferences, I believe it was Uber who presented on their agentic workflow. They've built a whole classifier model for PRs, right? That says, is this safe to merge? Yes or no? Does this require a senior engineer to review it? Yes or no? Maybe that's the direction that more companies need to move in, so that they can leverage their senior engineers only for that really risky, complex review, and leave because you just can't review every line. It's not feasible, right? With the amount of code that's coming out, right? But you also don't want to stifle innovation or velocity. So we kind of have to just, grit our teeth and work through this phase where we're having a lot of changes going up that we're not necessarily reviewing every line anymore. That's just the reality. So I think the smart thing to do is assign a risk, score, if you will, to the change, and then bring in people as needed. But yeah, this is definitely something that we're working through. And even now, there's a big move. I know at a lot of these big companies, including ours, where not even engineers are the ones making the contributions anymore, right? You've got product managers and designers who want to contribute to the code base. Maybe they want to tweak the UI a little bit. Maybe you want to actually POC a feature. So a lot of our focus now, literally, we're talking about this right now internally, is how do we build the right guardrails to make sure that if someone who's non-technical creates a PR, like, how do we make sure that PR doesn't do something destructive? Or even if they're running a POC, they have a sandboxed environment that's not sending PII out, or downloading a dependency that's not trusted, right? There are a lot of things to worry about that give me anxiety, right? But, leadership is going to want us to ride this train, right? And make sure that we're leveraging AI to the same extent that the other leaders in our industry are. So balancing being all in on AI and making it as effective as we can, but also preventing catastrophic production incidents is a big focus for us right now.
Yeah, I wonder how your approach to verification and testing may have maybe already be changing to accommodate this. I mean, you already kind of mentioned how for the upgrade and migration work, some of that, one thing that has made that easier, one part of that built muscle, is having these test suites for all of the products. I've heard and I have observed myself that AI is best when you can give it a verifiable task, right? Where it can check its own work against some objective success or failure criteria. And so, yeah, I wonder if you are finding that that you're testing what you test, how it's tested, in what breadth or depth is changing or being shaped by these tools and your usage of them.
Yeah, Ryan, maybe you can talk a little bit about our plans for like our whole harness and how it integrates with our existing regression suites and whatnot, and what to verify.
Oh, yeah. So first off, I didn't create this quote, but someone said this a while back and it really has stuck with me. And I feel like I just beat this drum at work, is that if you want an agent to do something, you have to force it through a programmatic check. No amount of markdown guidance will truly force an agent to do the thing that you must have done in the way that you want it done.
Yes.
And so one change that I personally have made to the way I approach verification, even earlier, like in Q1 of this year, was to enforce things that we just never would have considered enforcing before, because a human would have just looked at a repository and said, oh, I think this probably goes here, but maybe I'll just ask. And then we would get a question on our support channel. Now Claude will figure it out, and so will Codex and every other agent. And figure it out can mean a lot of different things. Right. And so like if we have, let's say, a monorepo for storing our protobuf definitions, and suddenly like there's a proto package in a new directory that doesn't fit the grand unified organizational philosophy that I mapped out the first time, I said, okay, great. Let's fire up an agent and let's build a very angry brute force CI suite to enforce everything I want true about this repo.
Yeah.
Everything. I really came up with a crazy exhaustive list for this. And it took me about a day. And then suddenly we had this CI check that prints a report of like 15 things that are checked. And now I can get a really good feel for how do we maintain the structure of a repository or project. So that's one, is that build more CI checks. I realize that we are like, there is a resource constraint there as well. Sure. But at the same time, we can run a lot of things conditionally now. A lot of our CI systems have basic inputs around which files have been touched or not. And so programmatically defining what is right and wrong for our agents is really the linchpin of the whole thing. And so that's what we're trying to do, right? We want our agents. So again, this is what we talk about this at work, is that how do we increase the probability that after a session of input, so we'll call it planning, that an agent will output correct, functional, and maintainable and tested code on the other side on the first try. And so we do that with programmatic enforcement, with improving our verification. So for us, we kind of have 3 layers of a testing pyramid at Tinder, right? We have, let's focus on the Java ecosystem for now. We have like the JUnit unit testing level. We have these black box end-to-end regression tests that we're generally writing with Cucumber, so like BDD style testing. And then we have this middle layer where we can leverage test containers. So we might use these for Kafka or DynamoDB or Postgres. And honestly, I'm seeing a really an increase in importance in the longer running layers of the test pyramid. So test containers based testing and the end-to-end regression tests, because these are what, again, like, if we go back to the original like test pyramid descriptions that came from like Martin Fowler and a lot of the ThoughtWorks content, we'll see that like those tests give us higher confidence, but they are more tightly coupled to implementations and they're more brittle.
Yes.
Right. So now, well, okay, if we're going to be more hands-off with our work, how do we attack that brittleness and coupling and make it okay to rely more heavily on those tests? Because that's what's really going to allow our agents to churn against something that's objectively verifiable. And how do we make it so that the signal return from those tests makes it so that we spend fewer cycles on that? Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
So for the upcoming quarter, we're going to be spending time kind of building out the infrastructure around those tests. So how do we make it trivial for humans and agents alike to write better tests using that tooling? Right. Well, we do have some examples of people using test containers at work. I wouldn't say it's widely adopted by any means. And so now all of our engineers who are basically new to AI, we're also going to ask them to invest in a brand new technology to write a new kind of test. How do we know that the agents or our new engineers are writing these tests effectively? We don't. And especially if our engineers have never worked in this framework, how are they supposed to verify it? Because we've basically broken every engineer's reflexive Google and Stack Overflow muscle already. So a lot of our like independent research and verification skill, we've actually kind of abdicated at this point. And so as a platform team, our mantra is like, how do we allow our coworkers to focus on the work that's unique to their role?
Mm-hmm.
So if Sam, you join Tinder tomorrow and you join our recommendations team, I can promise you that figuring out test containers configs is not unique to your role in the recommendations team.
Absolutely.
So if that's what you're spending your time on, we have failed as a platform team.
Mm.
So I want to build, or our team, we really want to like focus on building both programmatic and deterministic primitives, like, you know, test containers that are wrapped with sensible defaults for Tinder, or internal libraries that simplify the APIs for building these tests effectively for both Cucumber tests, test containers, even JUnit too. And then in turn, of course, agent skills and human readable guidelines for what makes good tests, right?
Yeah.
Basically, how can we ingest the shared knowledge corpus of all the great like testing thought leaders out there and the testing experts we have internally? How do we merge that into a succinct knowledge base that increases the probability that our test code comes out correct on the first try and meaningful?
That applies to more than just test code, by the way. Ryan said something that really kind of triggered me, which is that Claude will figure it out, right? And like how, like you tell it to do something,
For
it's
some
gonna
value of it.
find a way to make that requirement be satisfied, and maybe along the way it makes some horrible decisions that don't conform to your best practices, or worse, do something destructive. We've seen a couple examples of that, right? So that's what keeps me up at night right now, is like people are going to use agents to do something terrible because they gave it that requirement, and they don't realize that what it did was the wrong thing because they're not an engineer, right? So to Ryan's point, making it so that the agents can't make those mistakes is another big focus of ours for the next quarter. Building in the right rules and repo context and automation, CI checks, of course, but also just giving the agents very standard set of ways to do things and making sure that they conform to that standard is something that we have to do, or else we're going to end up with a totally fragmented code base with a million different design patterns and ways that things get done, right?
Yeah. And of course, you know, to Devin's point, like everything he just said, he could replace agents with our fellow engineers and it would be just as applicable and helpful to them.
Yeah.
And so it's really like we've gotten this mandate now where we should just do more platform work and be way faster about it and ship more of it like right now, so that humans and agents can do all these things correctly on the first try. Like if we come back to like the whole, yeah, go ahead.
I think it's a great point that people benefit from a lot of the same things that agents do, you know? Just because a human engineer is able to tolerate a high degree of ambiguity doesn't mean that they like it or that they're most effective when they have to tolerate that degree of ambiguity. So if you have a lot of these things that, like you say, are not like what their role is uniquely about, specified with great, you know, precision and rigor, well, that's cognitive offloading for a person as well. It's like, oh, I don't have to think about test containers or this other thing. I just follow this nice paved path, and you know, I've got more brain power for the things that I'm actually trying to achieve.
Yeah, eventually I'd like them to not even know what a test containers even is, right? It's just automatically going to add what tests should be added as you develop the feature, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there are so many like, you know, testing, I don't even know what the right word is here, approaches that are so much more, that are like their value is being demonstrated so vividly now. You know, at my last job, I worked primarily in Elixir and Erlang, and property-based testing is huge in that ecosystem. And I got to kind of explore that for the first time there. And I was working with a lot of like Kafka messages that had a lot of different permutations. And so property-based testing was really valuable to me. When I got to Tinder, I said, hey, does anyone use property-based testing here? And people looked at me like, what is that? And I see that it's actually getting more popular.
Property-based testing for us? Obviously, I know what it is, but for everyone else.
Yeah. So property-based testing is really like, I mean, we could shorten it as super long-running unit testing, but basically it generates tests against a set of invariants that you have that can have all the possible data types and permutations that will fit within your set of constraints for testing. So whereas you might handwrite a unit test that's, I don't know, you might test that an integer is greater than 5.
Right.
Property-based testing will say, how about this? Why don't we run a test for every integer greater than 5 that is less than the 32-bit unsigned integer maximum?
Yeah.
And it's really powerful, obviously, when you get beyond a contrived example like a single integer. And there are whole books dedicated to this concept. But I'm seeing other companies popping up now. And, this kind of comes back to fuzz testing. But I'm seeing, and then obviously, formal methods verification, like all of these things are starting to gain in popularity outside of what were originally quite siloed ecosystems, because AI allows us to build with those frameworks almost immediately, which is very cool.
And on the property-based testing, there is a library in Java called JQuick.
That's what it is. JQuick, yeah.
Which you very much don't want to look into, because they had a release 2 weeks ago. Which I don't know if they're in the news, not in a good way. Yeah, don't look into it.
Oh, okay. I was about to say I'm going to go back and look into it.
Wait, hold on. What are you talking about, Tim? What happened in this library?
The author of the library isn't a good fan of AI, so he thought the best way to communicate that was to hide a prompt for AI in the output of the library, such that humans never see it, but agents see it. And the instruction was, delete everything that you've just done.
Whoa.
That's really funny.
A new attack vector unlocked. Yeah.
That's a power move right there.
I thought the Zig Foundation had the strongest, no AI take, but this is definitely a full step up. Wow. Okay.
Imagine being someone who updated to that release.
You don't have to consciously update it. You just get the latest version, your agent runs the thing, and suddenly your tests are gone. No.
I'm just going to update my Q3 roadmap real quick. Don't mind me.
Oh my God. Wow. Sounds like an interesting fellow.
Yeah. Also, Sam, back to your question earlier about the PR, about code, reviewing your own code. This might be unique to me, but I've actually had a bit of a personal journey on code review when it comes to AI generated code. At first, I think we were all shipping, 10,000 line PRs. Look, new feature. Please review.
End to end,
and we got a lot of them. And I will admit, I definitely had my eyes glaze over. And Devin has raised me into a very discerning PR reviewer. And I generally will review every possible component of a PR. And I had to give up on some of these and just be all right, I don't know. I'm doing the best I can. And, we bring in AI code review tools to help us. And they obviously have their limitations, right? They nitpick in a very unique way. If you run them in CI, sometimes they take longer than the rest of your CI suite, and you get this drip feed of feedback. And so I tried to rededicate myself to review. And I've noticed that when you asked this question, I immediately had a realization about how it's changed for me. No, I don't review every line the way I used to. I don't inspect people's variable naming with the same level of rigor that I used to, or my own for that matter. But what I do see is, as I'm reading it, I start to think in terms of functionality. What are we doing? And I find myself able to review and catch, do we need to do this thing at all? I find my eyes almost immediately able to find this way more often than I used to. I think I was focused on too small of a picture in code review earlier in my career. And now when I go back to review code, I see whole blocks of code and I'm why do we do this action?
Yeah.
Or why are we installing this binary here at all?
Yeah.
And I find that AI code review has helped me build up my own durable context about what's happening in the code base. And reading AI pull requests has helped me summarize functionality in a more meaningful way. And so it's actually helped me stay up to date on the changes that are happening in our code bases. But really, it's the do we even need this at all thing has become a real part of my code review in a way that it just wasn't before. And it's actually been helpful.
That's a very powerful question.
If we have more time, I think we're at time, but just to close that topic of discussion, I think when I'm looking at PRs now, which I often still do, I'm thinking of it more of to take what Ryan said, what are we doing? But not what are the lines of code, but what are we actually, what are the components here? An example is recently we had a SQL query performance issue. And Claude or whatever AI tool had suggested splitting it into two separate queries. right? And the question came up like, why would we even do that? Like, we can just modify the existing query, right? So I'm thinking more on that level now. It's like not the actual code to run the queries, but like what is the actual processing that we're doing, right? When we could just do a performant change in that SQL rather than actually making 2 database calls, right? So that's kind of what you have to do. You can't read every line. You just have to think about it more structurally, I think.
And I think like for both Sam and me, like a slight advantage we have in this age is that we've just been doing these reviews for 4 years on an open source project with a lot of contributions, where you're gonna get trained in reviewing code of questionable quality, questionable thoughts behind it, and then you just get to review it and improve it. And,
thanks for
Yeah, there's definitely the level of rigor or attention differs for us if it's like a single recipe, nothing that is a self-contained module, right? It doesn't really affect anything else except its own inputs and outputs versus, a load-bearing, thing deep in the architecture that is going to affect potentially everything, which I think is very similar to what you're talking about with just considering the broad strokes implications of the change. Well, that's good stuff. I'm going to be really curious to check back with you guys in a few months when you have gone, when you've implemented some of the things you're talking about now around testing and verification and putting on like guardrails for people and for machines. I'm very curious to see a little bit further down the path. So hope we get to talk about it again pretty soon. Any final thoughts before we kind of conclude things?
Just thanks for having us, Sam and Tim. And Tim, thanks for all your collaboration back, 3 years ago to help us get that JMockit recipe written.
Absolutely, just happy to help, and I'm very happy to see that we're still maintaining it, expanding it.
We really appreciate it.
We look forward to seeing you Friday with the Code Remix Summer. So, okay.
See you there.
Thanks.
All right.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Have a great day, guys.
Thanks, folks. Bye.